Oh, Scott, come on in. Thanks for coming in. Have a seat. Have a seat. Well, again, thanks for coming in today. I see by your employee records that you've been with Hudkins for right at a year now. And my out time flies when you're having fun. Huh? Well, as such, since you've been with us for about a year, it is time for your annual performance appraisal. Or in your case, it will be your first annual performance appraisal. Given the fact that there's often a lot of confusion about what a performance appraisal is and isn't, I thought it would be beneficial to take a moment and let me explain the process to you, how it works, what it consists of, your interaction within this process, and what do we do with it when we're all finished. That make sense? All right. The HR committee here at Hudkins has established a series of 8 attributes that we, as managers, we use to evaluate the performance of all of our employees. And by all, I do mean all. This same concept, the same approach is applied to everyone within the company, up to and including our president and CEO, Dr. Jay Hudkins. So you're not being singled out here. It goes for everybody. Of those 8 attributes, those will be the benchmarks that we use to determine how well a given employee is performing against the tasks that they've been assigned. Obviously, Dr. Hudkins has a different series of tasks than you do, but the concepts are valid all the way across the board. Each one of the attributes has a numeric scale attached to it. It's a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being excellent and 5 being very poor. So there will be a number associated with your performance as it relates to each one of these components. Now, I'll admit that the number that I have assigned to each of these attributes for your performance over the past year is somewhat subjective. So as we go through our visit today, the door is open for discussion. If you don't understand or don't agree with a number that you've been given, then let's talk about it. You may be aware of something that I'm not, and vice versa. I may be aware of something that you're not aware of. The point being, they're open for discussion. Let's try to reach a consensus on how that number has been arrived at. At the end of our discussion today, I will ask you to identify 3 goals or objectives that you would like to set for the coming year. I don't need them today, but I would like to have them, if possible, within the next week. Those 3 objectives, if they seem to be appropriate, will be folded into this document, your performance appraisal, and they will represent the 9th attribute that we'll talk about when we get back together a year from now to see how well we have done, how close we've come to meeting the goals or objectives that you have established at that point. Once we get that document finished and we get your goals and objectives included, then that document with your signature and mine will be sent to our Human Resources Committee. This is the primary use of this particular document. The HR Committee will use that as a reference document when they receive any recommendations for a promotion or an increase in merit pay. Now, those recommendations will come from your manager, and in our case, they will come from me. But the final result, the approval of any promotion or increase in salary, will be the responsibility of the Promotions and Compensation Committee. And the performance appraisal document will be a key document that they use when trying to determine whether or not to approve a recommendation or not. So it has your input. It tries to measure how well we've done, and by we I mean both of us, both the company and you, how well we collectively have done towards the goals and objectives that we need. And then it goes into your employee record as a benchmark as the years go on. That make sense? Good. Any questions at this point before we get started? All right, well, let's just go ahead and jump into it. I do have your employee records here, and as I said before, I've gone through and have evaluated the 8 attributes as I see them. And in fact, the first attribute relates to dependability. The statement is, the employee is dependable. Now, As you're aware, we don't use time clocks here at Hudgens, but we do have our employee badge. You have to swipe that badge to get into the facility as well as get into your work area. By swiping that badge, Big Brother knows what time you showed up and where you've gone. The system knows whether you are actually here at the time and at the location that you're assigned to be. So that's one of the baseline attributes that we'll use to measure this particular issue of, did you show up to work and did you go where you were supposed to go when you were here? Now, granted, there are other ways to measure your productivity during that time, but at this point, the dependability attribute is looking at, do we have someone who shows up at work, shows up on time, and goes to the area that they're supposed to be at. If you do not show up for work, then the system knows you're not here, and any deviation of 15 minutes or more will be flagged within the system, and I will get the report saying that you weren't here. The absence of any deviations flagged and sent to me from the system means that tells me that you were here on the days you were assigned to be here and that you went to the area you were supposed to. So based on that issue, the fact of no deviations, I would say that would give you a score of 1 or a score of excellent. So it's always nice to know that someone shows up to work when they're supposed to. The second attribute deals with our policies and procedures. The employee adheres to published company policies and procedures. Baseline, this simply says, do we have an employee that knows how to play by the rules? And at first glance, one would think that this is kind of a given. Everyone they got to play by the rules, but such is not always the case. As you remember, when you first joined Hudgens, one of the first activities you were assigned to do was to review all of our policies and procedures and sign an attestation that said that you had in fact read them and that you agree to abide by them. You may remember that some of the policies carry the comment that violation of a policy could result in immediate termination. That's really the key reason that we take a look at the adherence to the policies and procedures over a given year to make sure that we don't have any particular issue that pops up. If an event had occurred during the last year that involved a violation of a policy or a procedure, again, that communication would have gotten back to me as your manager, and that documentation would have gone into your folder. Looking at your folder, I see no such notification, and so this attribute also gets a score of 1, being excellent. Over the next year, if our plans hold true the way we look at this point, you will more than likely find yourself in a situation where you'll be needing to fill out an expense report, either for customer meals or travel or things of that nature. The employee expense reporting procedure seems to be one that confuses a lot of our employees. So I would recommend that you take a little time before you have to fill out one of the reports, review the procedure, and let me know if you have any questions. If we can get them done correctly the first time, then it saves a whole lot of time in avoiding having to undo something that was done before. So take a minute, look at the employee expense reporting procedure, and if you have any questions whatsoever, let me know ahead of time and I'll try to help you out on that. The next attribute we look at deals with your ability to work in a team-oriented environment. When you joined Hudgens, you were assigned to the Operations Analysis Department. And as you well know, this is not a department of 1, nor is it a department of 7 individuals. Given the volume of analysis that we go through that your department does, it is critical that we are able to function as a group, as a team, to utilize the strengths and cover the weaknesses of any of the participants within that group. You were involved in the Facility Operations Task Force and the Emergency Evacuation Task Force, given by when we review the actual documents, the sections in there that you wrote. The fact that you performed in that area, and I know for a fact the emergency evacuation was not a talent or skill that you brought to the table. That indicates to me your ability to work well within a group, to play well with others, if you will, and to get that all involved. This is your first year with Hudkins, and as such, it's very appropriate to let your senior co-workers take the lead in the project development. Who does what approach are we going to take? As you gain a little more confidence in what we do and how we do it here at Hudkins, I would expect to see a bit more proactive role in developing specifically the approaches. You have a great background in analysis coming to Hudkins. I would recommend that you use that background. Don't be shy. Your co-workers won't be. If you feel there's a better way or a more efficient way to take advantage of something, get it out on the table and let it be discussed among the group. As a first-year employee, the performance was very satisfactory in there, so that gives you a score at that point of 3 in the satisfactory. Any questions so far? All right. So, the next attribute deals with flexibility. Your flexibility in the conditions or environment that may have an effect on your being able to do your job. Given the type of our business, the conditions that we all work in can change almost on a daily basis. We had a situation like that this year when your department was uprooted, was relocated to make way for the new compliance folks. So, I'm well aware that this relocation presented a physical challenge. Simply the distance between your work area and where all the records that you deal with are located. Before, they were right outside your area, so you could get to them at any time. That was not the case after the compliance folks came in. You were able to adjust to that change without any degradation in the morale, nor any reduction in your performance. I rank that as a very good, because that's not always the reaction we get when employees are put in that situation. So on this attribute, I'll give you a score of 2, very good. All right, moving on. The next attribute deals with your engagement within the company's philosophy and culture. To me, this is a very critical attribute, because if we don't believe why we're here, we can understand what we're doing, but if we don't understand why we're doing and believe in it, then we're never going to be able to rise to the level that we want. A company's culture will govern virtually all aspects of a workplace. How the quality of your work, the amount of work that you're able to put together, how you get along with your coworkers, your supervisors, how everything works together, the productivity, the morale, and the cohesiveness of the entire group. It's all driven by that philosophy. So in this, we not only look at your actions, what have you done over the past year, but we also take an opportunity to visit with your coworkers, get their perspective, see what they think of how well you exemplify the company's core philosophy and our culture. Those conversations this year, quite frankly, were very, very interesting on numerous occasions. It says here that you've gone out of your way to make a new employee feel at home, making sure they knew where the records are or who they need to see if they need additional information. I don't think you had anyone doing that for you when you joined Hudkins, so that was very rewarding to see you take on that role by yourself. That is our culture. That is one of the basic philosophies that we have here at Hudkins. We're all in this together, and we need to recognize that and help each other as we go along. You're also deeply involved in Order 729, the DOE Order 729 implementation. And this was spoke very highly also because this was not your initial signed area. I visited with the project manager of that particular activity. You may remember, I'm sure you remember, you were drawn in because the gentleman who was normally taking care of that had to go out on medical leave. The project manager noted you were more than capable in performing a gap analysis and freely shared your perspective on the best approach to meet these requirements. You may notice the sound effects we've got going on here. We try to make you feel at home and make it the sounds in there, so we don't want you to get too uneasy. But going back for just a minute on how you worked on that, it was very critical in being able to identify the gap analysis and be able to share that with your coworkers. That was very important, and that essentially together gave you a score of 1 or excellent on it. My compliments for your performance in that area. Did very well. Next attribute we're dealing with here is whether or not the employee is competent in performing the essential functions or is trainable to that particular level. Well, this is another key component of a annual performance review. Obviously, we can have the best employees in the world, but if they're unable to perform the task that they were assigned for, then they don't win, they don't grow, and the company doesn't grow either. Your initial focus upon joining Hudkins was in the procedure analysis, revision, and updating. As such, you were successful, at least by my records, in addressing over 150 documents since you started. Now, that's a number quite above normal for most new employees. Also, the attention to detail that you were able to show in the reformatting and the inclusion of key components driven by new compliance requirements was excellent. So that ended up with a score of very good, or a resulting score of number 2. Again, my compliments to you on that particular function. That is key. That tells me that you're performing the task that we thought you would be able to when we did the initial interviews. Next attribute we're dealing with deals with innovation. As it says, the employee shows innovation in ways to improve himself, the workplace, and the company. We here at Hudkins, we pride ourselves in having efficient processes and procedures, but at the same time we recognize that there may be a better way, there may be a better mousetrap than we've ever thought about. We try to look for situations where an employee can identify an opportunity for business process improvement and then is able to act on that suggestion. Your contribution to the reconfiguration of the operational procedure database. It's a perfect example of this type of attribute. You took the originally submitted database format, took it apart, realized that there was a better way, a more user-friendly way to make it work for what we wanted, and then put it into production. On that project alone, that got you a score of excellent on this attribute, a score of excellent. Compliments. Keep up that good work in there. The last attribute we deal with involves personal and professional development opportunities. Again, development is very critical to an important part of Hudkins Enterprises, an important part of our corporate culture. When you joined Hudkins, you were assigned 3 of the core training programs that we assigned to all new employees. You successfully completed all 3 of these assignments, and in doing so, you scored above the minimum required score on all 3 of the assessments. One of the assessments, the one on nuclear resonance theory, scored a 99%, which is well above the anticipated norm. That score level, especially on that particular topic, can be very difficult for a new employee, but that will benefit you well in your time here at Hudkins. Your successful participation in all 3 assigned courses gives us, which is what we expected, that gives us a score of satisfactory, or 3 in that area. We do offer additional training focused on the personal development. I noticed here in your records that you did not enroll in any of the personal development courses during the year. I'd highly recommend that you take advantage of these development opportunities. They'll assist you in honing the skills that you already have, but gives you a chance to be able to contribute even further within our workforce. Technical expertise is great. You certainly have that. It's a big value in our industry. But the ability to communicate that can be equally important. I would suggest you might want to take a look at the public speaking and the interviewing principles and practice development courses for the coming year. Those both will do you a great deal of benefit. Well, that covers all 8 of the attributes. Do you have any questions at this point? All right, very good. Well, if we take a look at the average score on these 8 attributes, you ended up with a score of 1.55. That's a very, very solid score, especially for a first-year employee, and I'd like to commend you for your accomplishments. It's off to a great start here at Hudkins. As we visited about earlier, this particular performance appraisal and its numeric score will be sent on to the Human Resources Department. They will use it as their key document when they figure out how they want to react to a recommendation for a promotion or a merit increase. Remember, within the next week, I'll need to have the 3 objectives or goals that you'd like to set. They will become part of this same document that we'll talk about a year from now. So I want to, just one last time, any questions or comments you'd like to make on the process? Very good. Well, I'd like to thank you for taking time to visit with me today to participate in this process, but also to thank you for your contributions that you've made to Hudkins over the last year. I'd like to wish you good luck in the coming year, and please don't hesitate. Let me know if you encounter any challenges along the way, because this is as much of a test of us as it is of you. Thanks again. Appreciate you coming in. Let me know if anything comes up that I can help with. Take care.